Hey guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this week's ukulele lesson, Matt's going to be teaching you how to play Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay. Now, I got a chance to play through this entire arrangement, and I have to say two things about it. The first off is that it is a ton of fun to play, and secondly, this is a chord melody that is presented with strumming technique. Most of the time when we jump into learning a fingerstyle tune or a chord melody tune, they tend to be rooted in finger picking technique. So it's kind of nice to switch it up a little bit and do something that has us building our strumming chops. So if you've been wanting to work on your strumming technique, this is a great tune to dive into, and I think it's going to be a good challenge for the intermediate and up player. So with that in mind, let's take a step back. Let's talk a little bit about this lesson. So in this video, Matt's going to be teaching you how to play the entire tune, but if you want to get the tabs to print off and follow along with, that's going to be available at this link right here, or you can go to the site rockclass101.com, do a search for the song's name. Now also on that page will be the really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer. This is a great feature where you can hit play. You can watch the tab scroll across in real time. You can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish. Just a great asset in learning this tune that much easier. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Matt to teach you how to play this. Don't forget to grab the high G ukulele, and I'll catch you at the end of the video.
Hello! In today's video, we're going to work on a solo high G ukulele arrangement of the Dock of the Bay. This uses a ton of strumming technique, which makes it really fun to play. Let's go ahead and dive in with the intro though, bringing the camera down. This, however, does not have much strumming. In fact, we're just going to play 4 notes for the intro. We're going to play open on the C string, then we're going to play open on the C string again, then we're going to play 2 on the E. I like to use my index finger here, and immediately slide it to the 3rd fret of the E string. So we play the 2, but immediately slide to 3. And then we're going to play that 3 again. And we're going to do that 4 times. So in time, that sounds something like this. 2, 3, 4. Going now into the verse, this is where the strumming begins. To start this, we're going to be playing a C chord. I like to play this C chord with my first finger here on the 3rd fret of the A string. I'm going to go down, up, and then a down on 5 of the A. Now I'm going to miss the strings coming back up, and I'm going to do a down again on the 3, and then I'm going to come up on 4, 4, 4, 7 for this E chord. So in time, that first measure should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. A quick note here is you'll notice that when I'm playing this, I keep my hand moving down and up consistently. There are 4 beats per measure, which means there are 4 down strums and 4 up strums. Keeping that regularly moving really helps. That's why I like to say the miss strums that I make so that my hand can continue moving. Going on into this 3rd measure now, it's going to be that E chord. We're going to miss going down. Then we're going to come up, down, miss coming up, and then a down and an up. So that pattern is something like this. It goes miss, up, down, miss, down, up. And in time, measure 3 sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that you can really get a feel for it, this is what the first 2 measures sound like, starting with that C. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into the 4th measure here, we're going to slide this index finger up for the bar across 5 with the pinky finger here on 8. I'm going to go down, down, all on that chord. And then for the next up, I'm going to slide it down 1/2 step to that E, and then I'm going to slide it down another 1/2 step to an E flat 3, 3, 3, 6 on the down, and then I'm going to slide it down 1 more to 2, 2, 2, 5 for the up strum on this D chord. And that's like the most iconic part of this song, right? It sounds so good. In time, measure 4 sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And And then as I go into the fifth measure, I'm going to be holding this D chord for the whole measure. And I'm going to very simply go miss, up, down, miss, down, up. And so in time, that sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the pair of measures together now, measures 4 and 5, should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going on to the sixth measure, we go back to our C chord, and it should look very familiar because it's almost the same as measure 2 was. It's just a little bit different of a rhythm. We're going to start by going down, up, and then instead of striking down, we're going to miss the strings on that down, and then we're going to come up again, and then down on the 5 of the A string. Then we're going to miss coming up, do another down on the 3, and then up on that E chord, 4, 4, 4, 7. So measure 6 in time sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And going into measure 7 should be very familiar because it's exactly the same as measure 3, which was miss, up, down, miss, down, up. And in time that sounds like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the two measures together, 6 and 7, should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then as we go into the next measure here on 8, it's going to be exactly the same as measure 4, which means we're going to do that F chord. And then we're going to be stepping it down from the F to the E flat to the D, just like we did before. Same rhythm there, which is down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And in time, that's something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then going into measure 9 here, it's a little bit simpler version of measure 5. So we are at that D chord. We're going to miss going down, then we're going to come up, and then we're going to go down, miss, down, miss, down, miss. So 3 down strums on that D chord. So in time, measure 9 is something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the pair of these measures together, 8 and 9, should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And now the whole verse should sound something like this, going from measure 2 all the way through measure 9. 2 and 3 and 4 and. As long as you keep this playing hand moving, you're going to have a good time with it. If you accidentally do an up strum when it should have been a miss, it's not a big deal as long as you're keeping that hand driving. So now as we go on to the chorus, we're going to start with our C chord. You can use your index finger like we did earlier. You can also use a different finger. I like to use my middle finger on this one. We're going to go down, up, down on that. Then we're going to come up on 5. So add your pinky here on the 5th fret of the A string, then back down on the 3. And then the reason I like to use my middle finger here is the very last chord we play here is an A7. Index finger goes to the 1st fret of the C string, come up. So that sounds something like this in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into the next measure here, which I think is the hardest of the tune. We're going to start with a miss, still on this A7. Then we're going to come up, then down. Then we're going to miss. And we're going to slide our index up to the 4th fret of the C string, add our middle finger on the 5th fret of the E string, and finally our pinky finger on the 7th fret of the A string. We're going to go down, up, down on that, which is kind of the pseudo A chord, A7 chord. And then for the very last part of this measure, we're going to slide the pinky up to 12 and do an up strum. The reason this is so difficult is we're going from 1 to 4, 5, and 7 to 12. So you can just kind of practice that transition. And with the strumming, it looks something like this. And in time, it sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the two measures together now, measures 10 and 11, should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going on to measure 12, we're going to slide this pinky down to 10 after we've missed the strings going down and come up on this 10th fret. Then we're going to slide it down to 7, do a down. And then we're going to miss coming up. Then we're going to play 5 on the A string. And I like to use my middle finger here for a down strum. Miss coming up. Back on 7 with the pinky, down strum. And then we're going to come up on the A7 we played earlier, 0, 1, 0, 0. So that's a bit of a difficult jump, that 7 to 1. So you can kind of practice that, just going down on the 7, up on the 1. Kind of a fun little exercise. But in time, measure 12 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into measure 13, it's going to sound something like this. Very straightforward. Hold this A chord, A7 chord. We're going to do a miss, up, miss, down, up, down, up. So in time, that's something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the two measures together, measures 12 and 13, should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going right into measure 14, we're going to start open here on a down, and then we're going to come up on 3 on the A string. I like to use my middle finger here on this 3. And then I'm going to do a down on that. Up, open, down on 3, up on 3, down on 4. I know that sounds crazy, but it sounds really good when you come back up on this D chord. We've played this earlier in the tune, 2, 2, 2, 5. And so that sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into the 15th measure, we hold this chord to start. We're going to do a miss, up, down, down, and then we're going to come up on 3 on the A string. So we take our pinky finger off, having our middle finger here on 3. And then this is really tricky. We're going to take our middle finger off and we're going to open up the bar so that the index finger has the A string open. This looks something like this, super zoomed in. You can see that I have the A string open. Got to get the bend there in the finger. Worst case scenario, if this is too difficult for you, it's okay to just mute the A string, but ideally we want that open A. Bringing the camera back out a bit. That's going to sound like this when you just make those 3 strums, down, up, down, and then we're going to come up on a C chord, adding our middle finger back on the 3rd fret of the A string, taking everything off. So in time, 15 sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the pair of measures, 14 and 15, should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into the 16th measure, we're going to miss on the C chord, come up, down on the C chord, miss again. Then we're going to go down and then up on 2 of the A string, just with our index finger here. Slide it down to 1 for a down strum, and then come up on the A7. So 16 in time sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then moving into measure 17, very straightforward. We miss on the first strum, and then we're just going to come up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Really straightforward bar. In time sounds like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and the pair of measures 16 and 17 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and that wraps up the chorus. Now at this point it actually repeats and goes back through and plays the verse and chorus all the way. But just so that you can hear the entirety of the chorus, this is measures 10 through 17, should sound something like this, nice and slow. 2 and 3 and 4 and So at this point, we go into the bridge of the tune. I think this is a little easier to play than some of the other parts. It's a lot of fun. We're going to start with that C chord, and we're just going to go down, miss, down, up on it. Pretty straightforward. Then we're going to go to a G chord. Haven't played that yet. Index finger here on the 2nd fret of the C string, ring finger here on the 3rd fret of the E, and middle finger here on the 2nd fret of the A. Do a down strum, and then you're going to miss coming back up before you do a down and up. So the pattern there on 18 is pretty easy. It's just the 2 chords, down, miss, down, up, down, miss, down, up. Sounds something like this in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And now going into the next measure here. On 19, we're going to play this F sus2, 0, 0, 1, 3, index finger here on the 1st fret of the E string, ring finger here on the 3rd fret of the A string. And we're going to just do down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up for the rhythm, but we're going to be changing as we go. We're going to start with the first down on 3, and then we're going to come up, open on the A string, leaving the index where it is, and we're going to do up, down on that. Then for the next 2 strums, we're going to add 3 on the E string, leaving everything else still open. We're going to come up, down on that. And then we're going to come up on 1 again. So taking that ring finger off, leaving the index finger here on the E string, and we're going to go up, down, up for that. So really easy rhythm, but some syncopation created by the switching of the chords. In time, 19 sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And at this point, it actually repeats 3 times. So what that means is you play 18 and 19 3 times all the way through, which sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then going into measure 20, after you've played that the 3 times, we go to a B flat chord, 3, 2, 1, 1, ring finger, middle finger, index. You don't have to bar all the way across for a B flat. I like to just do the E and A strings, makes it a little bit easier. We're going to go down, up, down, up, down. So that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And for the very last strum of that measure, we come up on a G chord, just pivoting. Now, there's a few ways you can play a G chord. You can use a bar here. That can sometimes make it easier for people. I still like to use my 3-finger method. I just like the control with it. But it doesn't matter, whatever's most comfortable for you for the G. Just make sure you can get it on that up strum. So measure 20 sounds like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then the final measure of this bridge is very simple. It's a miss, up, down on that G chord. And that's it in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the pair of measures, 20 and 21, sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the whole bridge section, which is measures 18 and 19, repeated 3 times, before then going on measure 20 and 21, should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And at this point, we go to the outro, the last few bars of the tune. No more strumming here. We're going to just play a C chord with our thumb. Then we're going to pluck these individual notes. Open on the A, 3 on the E, open on the E. Then we're going to play 2 on the C for the end of this bar. So that sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... And then going into 23, we're going to slide that 2 into 4. And then we're going to play open on the G, 4 on the C, 2 on the C, sliding that middle finger back down, open on the C, before playing 2 on the C again. And here's the kicker. When you play that 2, it's going to slide back into 4. So this is a difficult little piece to practice, inner measure, so to speak. But if you look at measure 24, you'll see that measure 24 is exactly the same as measure 23 was, right? And so let's go ahead and jump on now to measure 25 to see that it does the same slide to the 4, and then we're going to just play open on the G twice before playing open on the E, open on the G, and open on the A. Now I know we jumped ahead, but I find that it's a lot easier to learn this once you realize that 23 and 24 are the same. And so when you hear it all together, it sounds something like this. I'm going to play now measures 22, 23, 24, and 25 so that you can get a feel. It sounds like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... Isn't that nice? You can hear this is the whistling part of the original. And what's cool is this is just played 3 times, and on the 3rd time you just get softer as you play it. And with that repeat, that kind of ends the tune. So that final outro section sounds something like this all together. 2 and 3 and 4 and... So I just got quieter to end the tune. Bring the camera back up. This is a really fun one to play. Lots of strumming, which makes it really engaging. The intro and outro has a little bit of picking, making it a very complete arrangement. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. And I'll see you next time on the next lesson here on Rock Class 101. Thanks so much.
Alright guys, so this week's ukulele lesson was a lot of fun. This is a classic tune, and it's a really fun one to learn because it has us working on our strumming chops, which is a nice change of pace from what we typically see when we jump into chord melody or fingerstyle tunes, which has us primarily finger picking. So I do want to give you a friendly reminder before we wrap up that if you did want to get the tabs to print off and keep for your records, that was available at this link right here. Or you can go to the site, rockclass101.com, do a search for the song's name. Don't forget too, on that page was the really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer, so you can literally hit play, watch that tab scroll across in real time, highlight bars, loop sections, slow it down, all that fun jazz. So guys, again, I hope you enjoyed learning this tune, and we'll catch you in the next lesson. Take care.